We are on the eve of two international tournaments. How fired up are you? Pulisic pushes back on criticism from his heroes. And what is ahead legally for college soccer in the United States? That and more on Friday's Morning Kick Around. Hello and welcome to the show. The sound means one thing. You found your way to Morning Kick Around, where we cover the favorite game of the world in the
That's such a weird way to say that. Such a weird way to say that. Okay, sure. Keep going, Rob. Keep going.
It sure is weird, but it is a fun Friday ahead. Morning Kick Around comes to you live each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and on demand on the YouTube channel, of course. I'm Robert Kerr, American soccer commentator, and he's Jason Davis, the man who has rocked the airwaves for over 10 years. How you feeling, sir?
I'm doing okay. I'm glad that we've reached Friday. I'm not sure what today is going to deliver, but we're here and we get to do it again, and I'm always excited. Thanks to all the MK Ultras who support us, all the people who are joining us this morning as we do the show.
Yes, good morning to all, and thank you for joining us. If you're watching this now and you haven't hit subscribe yet, do so now. Join the 2,500 plus who have joined this show. We are working towards becoming the town square for the American soccer conversation. If you want to take it a notch further, you can hit the membership button. $3.99 a month makes you an MK Ultra who have early access to videos, priority commenting on this interactive program, and you get to get access to the Morning Kick Around Discord channel, great threads, local, MLS, national, and international thread topics there. Great place for the soccer conversation while we're not making videos. You can find us on social media at MKickAround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. You can also support us financially outside of the YouTube sphere, coffee.com/morningkickaround. There you can name your own contribution amount and schedule something, a regular contribution as well. And finally, final note, you can find us as a podcast, Morning Kick Around, on your favorite podcast platform. You ready to kick some balls?
Let's do it. Yep, let's get in.
All right, long balls here on Friday's Morning Kick Around. Long ball number one here on Morning Kick Around. I'm Robert. He's Jason. Welcome in. We are on the eve of two international tournaments. The Gold Cup and the Club World Cup both start tomorrow. Miami versus LLE in the Club World Cup, and Mexico versus the Dominican Republic in the Gold Cup. Where are we at? How you feeling? There is a lot of soccer to come. 63 games in the Club World Cup running all the way until the 13th of July. 16 teams in the Gold Cup, with the final of that competition ending on the 6th of July.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting summer of soccer, to be to say that, you know, to kind of undersell it a bit. I guess I'm not sure I'm overly excited for either one of these tournaments. I would rather have one big tournament than two kind of crappy tournaments.
We're definitely at a quantity, at least from this, like we're on the edge. We're on the ledge of these tournaments, looking out into the canyon of soccer ahead in the summer. I feel like we're in a quantity over quality sort of a scenario. We talked a little bit about it off air. Like, we have the World Cup next summer, and I think the Club World Cup might be adding some confusion and kind of draining that like hyper spotlight that is the Club World, or the World Cup in 2026. Do you maybe when we see the games, maybe we'll change our minds. Maybe there's some enthralling matchups or some sort of unique circumstances that come about. But I feel like it is distracting from next year.
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think so at all, because nobody's thinking about next year yet. No, America, meaning, okay, look, you and I, people in the soccer bubble, all of our incredible supporters and MK Ultra, shout out to Angus, who's here this morning. I feel indifferent about all of these midsummer tournaments. Angus and I are on the same wavelength. America is not even aware a World Cup is coming. It's not. I mean, I'm saying that in a very general sense, but if you think about, the soccer community, we've all been building to this. And when we get to a couple months out from the World Cup, there will kick in a hype machine and people will be talking about it, and it will make the conversation on various sports talk radio shows and on television and the debate shows and all this. Probably it's going to be, Skip Bayless across the way from some other guy arguing whether the World Cup matters, which is going to piss me off. But we're not there yet. None of those people who can actually drive the major mainstream conversation are talking about the World Cup yet. I mean, the Pulisic thing, which we're going to get to on today's show, and the little bit of back and forth that's around his decision not to play this summer in the Gold Cup, that will kind of make its way in a little bit. I do think the Club World Cup is getting in. I saw Lebitard was talking about the Club World Cup, but not because it's soccer and look at all the big teams, but because we know that ICE and CBP are going to be out doing security at games, and one has to wonder, as I've also seen news that a boat was pulled over by the Coast Guard that had like the mayor of Miami-Dade County on it, and they were checking citizenship papers. I mean, that none of that is like encouraging for the excitement around these tournaments. It's chilling my own excitement as a politically aware person. And as a soccer person, I can't get myself yet to that. Like, it's going to be interesting and fascinating. I'm going to want to watch some of these games. I don't know. And obviously with the U.S. men's national team, Rob, in the Gold Cup, that's enthusiasm has waned because of the way that team looked in their last friendly, and with the roster missing so many big players.
With these tournaments, and really the story about the mayor and the Telemundo executives being pulled over in the boat, that really shows that where we are just in general in the country and where we are with these tournaments starting tomorrow, of the reality versus the commercial presentation. Yeah. Like
I would say, that's the issue. I'm going to address Andy. I'm sorry. I'm going to address Andy. He said, does mainstream radio and television still exist? Honest question. And it's a reasonable thing to ask. Right, it's a reasonable thing to ask, and I bring up Lebitard, and I bring and you can talk about Callan Cowherd, and I think Pat McAfee, and not just as three examples of this, while we are fractured more than ever, and we are doing this show because we are trying to bring something to soccer fans who can't find this kind of conversation anywhere else. Right, if we didn't think there was a marketplace, or people weren't choosing and had the ability now with YouTube and podcasts and everything else to choose what they consume, we wouldn't be doing this show, because there'd be no hope of actually capturing an audience. Everybody would be listening to the same three radio shows or watching the same three television shows. And so, mainstream radio and television has changed, but I still think there's a sense that, someone like McAfee can drive a conversation that goes even beyond his particular reach. He's a massive show, especially by modern standards. But people who don't even watch McAfee will talk about what McAfee covers because it breaks out from his little bubble. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, that's true. And you bring up another point about McAfee and the TST, and how that didn't seem like it had as much heat on it, even though there was an ESPN desk of the McAfee show at the tournament. There is another tournament that kind of unnaturally made prize money and basically I don't know, what would you call that? The TST is an amateur team can win $1 million. But what do we have starting tomorrow? We literally have the same thing, but just on a gargantuan scale. It's like, come here and win $1 billion. And so just the scale of that maybe got outmatched. But back to the point of the mainstream, while it doesn't exist in the same way it did maybe 10, 20 years ago, there are still louder voices from that era that still dominate the conversation, or just even like places like ESPN FC, like people still regularly check in on those. Those get huge numbers. So that's the sort of thing we're talking about penetrating to a degree.
I mean, relatively speaking, huge numbers, I guess. I don't know. I guess so. If we're talking about these two tournaments and sort of how excited, I can't tell you how excited to be for either one of these tournaments. That's up to you. If you're a U.S. men's national team fan, I won't be mad at you if you're like, I'm not really whatever. I'm not really interested in this. Look at what just happened. The story is now more about who's not there than it is about who is there. That obviously depresses interest. and look, if you're a Mexico fan, maybe even Mexican fans will be like, well, is this really that big of a deal? The U.S. isn't as good as they could be. Maybe we beat Panama, and I think Coca Garcia is going to miss this tournament, so that's a big blow for Panama. Like the sense that it's a major tournament, the Gold Cup, is completely out the window, and probably was even before.
Yeah, I was going to say, was there ever a year where it was the pinnacle?
And then, of course, the Club World Cup is still a mystery. It's an unknown quantity. And when we get to the Fab Four, we're going to point to some games, and we'll pick out a Club World Cup game, because we are going to get a sense for at least two teams of how seriously they're going to take this thing from the outset. I don't mean if they make the semifinal. I mean from the outset, because if this was a World Cup, the tournament we all center our soccer lives around, or many of us do, there would be no question that you play your strongest team in your first group stage match. We honestly don't know if that's happening, although I think maybe the matchup is going to dictate some of that. But so that because we just don't know what this Club World Cup is going to deliver, and because there's been so many bad headlines around it off the field, it makes it tough to get excited.
It sure does. And just another side note from a different perspective overseas, from the English perspective, I did notice that one of the biggest voices, Gary Lineker and Micah Richards, they have a podcast over there, and I think they got commissioned to cover it like yesterday, and they just put out a first episode, and they were like, what the hell is this thing? And so if voices like that are clearly like guns for hire to cover it, like that's pretty thin. So like you said, we shall see. Big voices will address it if they have the rights or some sort of partnership. But
there's a very good chance, based on what we know about ticket sales, that this is going to become, look at how many nobody's going to the Club World Cup. And there will be two different approaches. One of them will be, this is a joke of a tournament. Why the hell are they doing this? Nobody cares. And then the other side will be, well, Americans don't care about soccer, or Americans aren't showing up for these. And again, maybe there will be, we don't blame them, or it could be, let's all point and laugh at the Americans who play other sports for some reason.
A random prediction after, like, if there's like a week of bad attendances, someone throws out in the media, America shouldn't have the World Cup anymore. Prediction.
That's already going to happen because of other things. Again, political questions. But yes, absolutely. If it's, and that's very thin evidence that the United States should not have the World Cup if nobody shows up to the weird, pulled out of thin air, created from nothing 48 team or whatever with
cash injected.
How many teams are in this Club World Cup again?
So Club World Cup has 32 teams and 63 games.
32 teams. Yeah. All right.
All right, moving on to long ball number 2 here on Friday, June 13th. Another big thing might happen this summer. The owner of Inter Miami, Jorge Mas, he fully expects the MLS calendar to change with all the Pro Rel talk, Division I talk, USL, all these international tournaments. The MLS calendar change proposal kind of like went into the back of our minds there for a minute, but Jorge Mas putting it there in the forefront, saying that it might even come as soon as the summer meetings, a decision here on the calendar change.
I mean, Jorge Mas is he's a character, right? He's got ambition. He's the one that convinced Lionel Messi to come to America. Obviously he turned the entire team over to Lionel Messi based on who they have signed and their coach. He has been, when I say ambitious, I think, it can be problematic the way Jorge Mas operates, because he seems to be out of step with a lot of MLS ownership. But of course, if you want to see MLS break out of sort of the mundane, standard, step-by-step approach it's been following for 30 years, you need a Jorge Mas, right? You need somebody who's willing to rock the boat. And Jorge Mas, at least in this regard, is willing to rock the boat. And this is fascinating. To go public, fully expect that we will decide to align the calendar in the summer. Not, we'll do it after, we're going to vote again after the World Cup, or we'll find some, or we're going to talk about this some more, but they're going to vote on this in the summer, and he thinks they have the vote. Why would he say this publicly? Now, he could be just telling the truth. He could say flat out, he could be saying what he believes based on what he has seen around the table, or he could be trying to apply pressure. I don't know. Again, this one is, if this is happening though, Rob, this is a sea change for American soccer. And you got to wonder about the knock-on effect with every other league in this country that follows the same calendar that Major League Soccer does right now, what that means. And I know it's not about ProRel, it's not about the USL, but would USL have to switch their calendar if Major League Soccer does this?
That's a fascinating question. I know a couple of years ago, USL was in a bit of a throw something at the wall and see if it sticks sort of a mode. And I know that they did propose a calendar change a couple of years ago, but that seems to have gotten a little quieter, and they've made a lot bigger announcements within this calendar year. So it'd be interesting to see. I mean, that would definitely put the two different league systems not, completely out of alignment with each other.
It would be odd. I'm not saying that it would feel wrong. I don't know if it would be, I don't know what the right thing for the USL business would be. And maybe we need to talk about that. But you also have USL, who has chosen to launch their top flight women's league on the FIFA calendar, as Jorge calls it here. Right. So is that an indicator that they want to switch the men over to that calendar? Or, is it simply a recognition that within the women's game, if they want to sell players one day or things like that, that it's better for them to be on this, again, FIFA calendar? I don't know what the thinking is. I don't know if one has anything to do with the other, if they think of the men's and the women's sides are completely separate in terms of how they align their calendar, or if they want to bring them all in line with one another because it's too much. It's just too different. Now, Jorge Mas, do you believe him? Because he can't bluster. He can be a bunch of nonsense. Do we believe that Jorge Mas actually has a line on this, and he thinks that he's right that this is going to happen?
He's definitely no stranger to work in the media game, so it wouldn't surprise me if his words here had some sort of a reactionary effect he's looking to make. And yeah, it's very intentional. He seems like everything is a chess piece to a degree with Mr. Mas. It's wild that he said it at this time with all the other stuff going on. But I was just going to say, is he becoming one of the biggest change makers in American soccer? I mean, he's definitely like stripping away, and he's not shy to bring up new ideas and do bold decisions.
Yeah, well, I think because of the way Major League Soccer was born, you had a bunch of guys who were taking a massive risk, right? The Krafts, the Hunts, the Anschutzes of the world. They were taking massive risks, and they couldn't really be like, you couldn't be a character owner in Major League Soccer, at least not in the early years, because it was such a minor league kind of operation. Like, it wouldn't bring you any glory to be rattling the cage about American soccer when MLS was playing in NFL venues on artificial turf and 10,000 people were showing up per game or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't have any cachet to it. Now, because this is Miami and he's building a stadium and he's got the best player in the world on his team, he's got cachet. This brings glory to Jorge Mas. And I think that's part of this, right? I think he likes being the guy that sort of is carrying American soccer forward. I don't know. He went on to say that one of the other steps that they want to take, or that they should take, is roster flexibility, the ability to expand them. He wants to be able to spend more money. He says that has to be a function also of our league revenue and revenue of teams. So he's not completely he's not saying we should spend and not attaching it to reality. So at least there is that. We have been able to show that increased eyes on the league will be eventually reflected in media values. Roster flexibility is something that we've worked on and will continue to work on in order to allow us to have deeper rosters. So he's talking, and this is on the eve of the Club World Cup. So don't think that that's not connected to this. And he'd see teams going into it. They play the opening game tomorrow night. Again, ticket sales are slow. And I think what he's saying is, I want my team to be able to compete in that competition. And I know right now, the way that Major League Soccer is set up, we probably can't.
Looking at the chat, one of our regular viewers threw an interesting comment. Don't have the cross verification of the facts here, but Urias in the chat saying Russia did a single year to buy your calendar switch in 2012. They started the first new calendar year early, and not in the fall, but in the spring, expanding from 30 to 44 games. That's an interesting note, that there is a little bit of precedent of switching full calendars for a league. And going back to your point of the USL Super League, the Women's USL League, they began their life as a new league with the European calendar, and that finals actually this weekend, I believe. for the USL Super League. But be interesting to see if it's even possible. We've had segments before it earlier where it seemed like if they were going to make a switch, it'd be this year or 2026 with the World Cup in the summer. But we shall see. Provocative stuff, though, from Jorge Mas talking about an announcement, calendar change possibly coming this summer. Third long ball here on Friday, June 13th. It's the Fab Four. This is where myself, Jason, producer Jenny, and you, the MK listeners and viewers, pick the 4 top games of the weekend. So fourth pick will be the chat. So get your games that you are carving up time for or setting a TV reminder for in the chat, and you will be the fourth of our Fab Four of the weekend. Lots of games on lots of different competitions, local stuff, domestic league, Gold Cup, Club World Cup, the Women's Super League final, all happening in the same weekend. Where are you going to start with our first pick of our Fab Four here on the June 13th weekend?
I got to stay true to my roots. I'll pick the U.S. men's national team opening up the Gold Cup against Trinidad and Tobago on Sunday in San Jose. It's not what I hoped for this summer. It is nowhere close to the roster that I wanted to see with Mauricio Pochettino in charge, building up to the World Cup next year. But they do have something to prove, right? Off the humiliation against the Swiss, got to show that they can actually win games in this tournament, right? There's a level of impending disaster and doom that's swirling around this team that they have to shake off. I don't think there's going to be a coaching change, even though I see various other soccer properties covering the game in America saying, is it time to sack Pochettino, or could Pochettino be sacked? It's not happening. It's not happening. They invested too much. This is not I suppose if you were going to do it, maybe doing it now would be the best time to do it. I don't know who they would bring in to replace him. Again, it's a sunk cost fallacy kind of question, whether or not you're past the point of can it get better. You kind of have to trust. He hasn't had his best team together. This won't be that, but maybe he shows us that he has a sense of how to put together a competent team via the pieces that he's got at the moment, because he admitted after saying he was going to rotate and doing it, he admitted that he got it wrong against the Swiss. So he needs to get it right against a team that's nowhere near as good as Switzerland.
Do you think that I know you may not be a big into predictions at this stage, but do you think men's national team is more likely to come out firing and try to blow past Trinidad and Tobago on at the weekend? I mean, is that even possible? Is this group of players good enough to blow past anyone? I mean, it'll be pretty intriguing to think about, because we're talking about ticket sales and all that for Club World Cup, and the Nations League out in California wasn't the most attended games. I did see that there's still games that are tickets available for that game out in San Jose, which we'll see what it looks like. Hopefully there's a good atmosphere for that. It's not, in a football stadium, and there's been plenty of lead-in time to sell tickets. So we shall see. U.S. men's national team versus Trinidad. And going into this, you said it's not the summer that you wanted. I felt like going into this with how the Nations League went and disappointed, I thought that this Gold Cup was either going to be the most important or the least important. And unfortunately, it seems like it's the latter. It's maybe the least important and the least prestigious, the men's national team going into this Gold Cup. But moving on, my pick, the second pick for the Fab Four, is kind of a test of the water for the Club World Cup, or at least the early stages of it for the big teams on Sunday. UEFA Champions League winners Paris Saint-Germain is taking on Atletico Madrid. Obviously, two of the world's biggest club teams. They play on Sunday afternoon, and I'm really interested in this one. How serious will these gigantic clubs that have interest worldwide, how interested are they going to be? Are they going to play this like it's an exhibition match, or are they going to be playing like there's like, what, $100 million on the line?
You have to imagine there will be a letdown for PSG just because they won the most prestigious club tournament in the world. And as much as a Gianni Infantino maybe wants to turn this one into that, it's not. Who cares? The money matters. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the money's not some sort of motivation for PSG, but this isn't the same as winning the Champions League. So what kind of team does Luis Enrique roll out there? Now, even if it's not the best PSG can offer, I imagine it'll still be entertaining. But if there's no, I think Ousmane Dembele might be hurt. If there's no Desiree Doué in the lineup, if Vitinha sitting after the Nations League, which Portugal just won, and he was playing a role, like these guys have had no break. Some of these guys have had zero break. They've gone from Champions League to Nations League to Club World Cup. I can't imagine that they will be playing a lot in the early stages of this tournament. So again, we're kind of looking at maybe this is the B or C squad for PSG. What about Atleti? Knocked out of the Champions League against Real Madrid this season, finishing third in La Liga, which is kind of their standard operation. Bringing back Antoine Griezmann via contract extension. We'll see what level of participation he has. I saw they've signed Longley from permanently from Barcelona. Again, I don't know, Rob. It's fascinating. We'll see what that lineup looks like for these two teams.
And does the European champions versus one of the best Spanish clubs, what kind of interest is that? They're playing at the Rose Bowl.
The Rose Bowl. Do you know how many seats are in the Rose Bowl, Rob? It's a lot of seats.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest stadiums. I just Googled it, and according to the Google machine, it contains almost a capacity of 90,000. And so if they're only selling like 25,000 for Leo Messi in Florida, I can't imagine what a French versus a Spanish team in California attendance might look like. Do we have producer Jenny? Are you ready to pop in and give us your third pick in this weekend's Fab Four? Here she is.
Here I am. I am going to stick with the domestic route, and I'm going to go with the kind of cool jewel of the MLS slate this weekend, Columbus Crew against Vancouver Whitecaps. Vancouver surprised me last week with their lack of international call-ups on their roster, and they still went and made mincemeat out of the Seattle Sounders, which made the Portland Timbers fan of me very, very happy. I don't love the Vancouver Whitecaps, but I hate Seattle more. So I'm really interested to see how they'll handle another game without the help of their international call-ups, and I'm also interested to see if Columbus can break their 5-game winless run at home against the best team in Major League Soccer.
There you go. And Vancouver, their only loss in the year still in domestic competition. The Nations League, when all the internationals were absent.
They lost that one MLS game during the previous international window, which is their only loss of the MLS season. So that's why they really surprised me with the performance in Seattle last weekend. Yeah.
I would say this about Columbus. They are not, I mean, look, we set a very high bar for them. And they did that. They set a high bar, and we judged them by that bar, and they're not quite meeting it right now. And it almost feels like, oh, well, the Crew aren't good enough to be challengers this year. They've slipped down to 6th place. They haven't won in a while. Probably that's unfair, and they may click it back in. But this is going to be a test for them against the league's best team. Now, you'd mentioned international call-ups, Jenny. Obviously, there are some that will affect this game. Brian White's not going to be there. Sebastian Berhalter's not going to be there for Vancouver. And on the other side, Patrick Schulte got hurt, so he's not going to be available, I don't think, for the Crew because he's missing out on the Gold Cup because of that injury. Sean Zawatsky also left U.S. camp, not available. And you've obviously got Max Darvston, who's with the U.S. men's national team. So, how do these two managers manipulate this? We've seen Vancouver do it well. Can Wilfred Nancy counter?
Before we move on to our chat pick, there is a good question in here. I don't know if we have the time to really dip into it that much, but Andy asks, do empty seats validate the United States soccer culture?
We're so savvy as soccer fans in this country. We know bullshit when we see it, Rob. Why would we buy tickets for bullshit? That's good. I like it, Andy.
It gets served every now and again, and I think we've discovered the smell of it. And I think the Fab Four pick of the weekend, something we just touched on a little lightly, the USL Super League final, I think, is probably a good fourth pick. Tampa Bay Sun versus Fort Lauderdale United, and the venue, James Big Jim Williams Stadium there. So that's a fun one.
Yeah, I mean, I have not had a chance to dip into the USL Super League maybe as I would have liked to, but obviously a big moment for them to be having their final in a Florida matchup.
So the Fab Four of this weekend heading in starting on June 13th, United States men's national team versus Trinidad and Tobago, PSG versus Atleti, Columbus versus Vancouver, and the USL Super League final. Thank you for chipping in. If you're watching this now and you haven't hit subscribe, do so now. Morning Kick Around is growing, and we are working towards becoming a town square, so to speak, for the American soccer conversations. Not too many independent voices in this fractured landscape covering the game we love. So we are looking to fill that gap and keep the Morning Kick Around movement going. Beyond subscription, you can become a member, become an MK Ultra for $3.99 a month. You get early access to videos, priority commenting, and access to the Discord, which is providing a fun outlet for soccer conversations, both near to home and across the globe. You can follow us on social media at MKickaround on X, Instagram, Blue Sky. Write us a note on the Gmail, morningkickaround@gmail.com. And then you can also find us as a podcast. Did you know that, Jason? Find us on a podcast, search Morning Kick Around on your favorite audio platform. All right, we got a great guest interview next. Soccer lawyer Andrew Visnovsky talking the House ruling and how it affects NCAA soccer here next on Morning Kick Around. Welcome back into Morning Kick Around. Robert Kerr. Welcome back into Morning Kick Around. Robert Kerr alongside Jason Davis, and we are welcomed by a special guest in the post-House ruling era. We've brought on sports lawyer Andrew Visnovsky. Welcome to Morning Kick Around. Walking into a bold new world here, and probably lots of legalese to come.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. The House settlement is a wild thing. It's kind of crazy. It's going to set out the basically how college sports operate for the next 10 years, barring any other legal challenges to it, which is kind of mind-blowing that a court settlement is going to do that and not some sort of collective bargaining agreement, which is a gripe for another time, hopefully in 10 years. But it changes the landscape of professional sports in the United States significantly, and completely changes one of the biggest sports industries in our country.
Yeah, Andrew, one of the reasons we wanted to get you on is because, you know, after the settlement was approved, and I don't know how deep into the legal stuff we want to get with that, but I know you have some thoughts about the approval of the settlement to begin with. And this does not just apply to soccer, but we care about soccer. You're soccer lawyer on Blue Sky.
Right.
What you said was that this decision or this approval of the settlement, it makes the NCAA Division I soccer the largest unsanctioned professional soccer league in the world. And that seems like a big statement. Can we break that down? And just for anybody who might need to be walked all the way there, why would you say something like that? How does that make sense?
Sure. So when you think of how soccer is organized, it's kind of under like different umbrellas that are under different umbrellas, right? And so you have FIFA at the top. That's the biggest umbrella. And then it has national associations that are underneath that govern and sanction the sport within those countries. So for us in the United States, that would be U.S. Soccer. So U.S. Soccer has to sanction and govern the leagues for those leagues to be within the FIFA family under the FIFA umbrella. The NCAA has never been directly sanctioned by U.S. Soccer and kind of operates under its own rules too, right? Like they have different substitution rules. They have different time counting rules. They have a lot of different ways to go about governing the sport, but they're not governed by U.S. Soccer. And the way that sort of has been sort of pushed to the side and ignored is, one, soccer is not the biggest sport in the United States. The United States is a big country that FIFA wants to be involved in. And also this idea that like it's quote unquote amateur sports, so that it's not as big of a deal as as say if a professional league was operating outside of the sanctioning of the United States Soccer Federation. So now with the House settlement, because universities can start paying athletes cash money dollars for performing and playing on their team, and not just for their image rights or for their names, you have a situation where the leagues are becoming at worst semi-professional, because some players might get paid and some might not, and at best fully professional. We should say that this is college sports. The teams are getting $20 million. The school institutions are getting $20 million to pay all of their students and student athletes, and most of that money, probably 90% or even higher, is going to go to basketball and American football. But yes, I think the sports that are just under that are probably women's soccer, men's soccer, and probably like maybe men's hockey and maybe women's hockey, maybe softball too. So there are going to be players that meet the definition under FIFA regulations, that meet FIFA's definition of professional, that are playing for these leagues or these college teams, just by virtue of the numbers of how many people participate, right? And so a soccer powerhouse like Virginia is going to start paying players because they want to recruit and stay on top of that. I think we'll see a lot of schools maybe get rid of their soccer program, unfortunately, or drop down division or make it a club sport. Or we'll start seeing them commercialize their teams more and start promoting their teams more like a professional team in a way where they can start making money to cover the costs of keeping these players around. It's funny, not to get too deep into the legal weeds, but I've always said that NCAA has always been a professional soccer league, because the FIFA regulations say that the only thing that makes a player professional is if they're getting paid more than what they spend to participate. So if you look at scholarships as compensation for their involvement in the team, it's already sort of professional. But it's easy for FIFA to hand wave that away and be like, well, they're just getting paid to play. They're getting a scholarship. It's an in-kind thing. They're still not getting paid to play. It's different but related.
There's a lot there, obviously, and we are talking to you after we now have word that U.S. Soccer has formed a committee. I believe it's called Next Gen. And JT Batson, CEO of U.S. Soccer, specifically said that this is kind of as a result. They are following the path now that is laid out by the House settlement. So, with what you just said, if indeed NCAA Division I soccer at the very least meets all the requirements for what is professional soccer, I don't know if you have any sense of what FIFA might do in this situation, or if U.S. Soccer is trying to cut FIFA off at the pass and make sure that FIFA doesn't start imposing things that would burden soccer and potentially end all these programs, because, as you said, schools might just not think it's worth their while anymore.
Yeah, so I don't think FIFA would ever step in and stop. There's no way they can really stop these teams from playing. The only thing that they could do is ban players from playing international football.
Okay.
There's a question as to how things like USL League 2 and NPSL work with loans for players playing in those summer leagues from those schools. But I think generally FIFA's opinion of soccer happening in the United States is, if it's happening, we're happy to have it happen. And so I don't think they're going to really really hammer down the NCAA in any way. I don't think they look at them as any sort of competition for what they're doing either, unlike, say, like a European Super League. But there might be some issues with players playing on national teams if these NCAA leagues or conferences start really professionalizing and not coming into the fold. I know that a lot of Power 5 conferences have been in talks with U.S. Soccer for a really long time, even prior to the House settlement, to work on the the schedule and trying to put together a year-round schedule, which I think is which they're getting some headway on. So this isn't the first time that, and the first reason for their collaboration with U.S. Soccer, but U.S. Soccer being involved in announcing their involvement means to me that they're going to have some sort of sanctioning of these college conferences in some way. I don't think it'll necessarily be like a division. They'll call them all Division threes. I think maybe they just have a third level or a fourth level in the pro league standards. It's just college soccer. But that's more of a guess than anything else.
I'm sorry, Rob. I'm sorry. I know you want to jump in here, but basically what we're laying out, and you're right. I mean, what can FIFA really do? Probably nothing. I mean, it's an opt-in situation, not necessarily that FIFA has any power over college soccer. But what you're saying is basically the way the world that I'm imagining is just a world where there are a lot of exceptions, which has always been the case for college sports, right? It's just exception on top of exception. If these are professional players, do the same rules apply to them, the ones that have been collectively bargained or anything like that? Does any of that apply to these players? And who gets to decide that they don't? And I know the NCAA is looking for an antitrust exemption as part of the fallout from this.
Yeah, I mean, so it'll be interesting what happens with the laws around these if Congress gets their act together to pass laws that says that the NCAA can have an antitrust exemption. I don't know how that could supersede the settlement. Possibly. I don't know. Class action settlements are different than what I usually do in my practice. And class action settlements already are a little bit more impervious to antitrust challenges than your run-of-the-mill settlement agreement. But I think and honestly, I don't know if the question will ever be answered, because there's questions like this all around the way that American soccer works and how it applies FIFA regulations, because everything is a little weird and different here compared to the rest of the world. And FIFA seems very comfortable granting us some sort of exemption or some sort of stay of execution, just because of virtue of how different we run our sporting institutions here versus the rest of the world.
It's hard to know if this is like the death knell of the college system, or the first step in the path for it to being at its best. It's my head is whirling a little bit, trying to kind of get my head around this, because obviously the House ruling probably didn't necessarily have soccer in the forefront when it came down, and then with the development of FIFA, or not FIFA, the USSF having like a plan to kind of swoop in, kind of adds a new element. Do you think that we're headed into a Wild West, or more of like a foot forward, legitimized
consolidation?
Consolidate. Like, is this a step towards legitimacy, or a step towards just like oblivion?
Yeah, I don't think it's oblivion. I think for a very long time, especially on the men's side, less so on the women's, because the women's college soccer has all proved to be a great system for developing professional players, and similar to the rest of college sports in terms of developing world-class athletes, right? The United States is at the top of the heap when it comes to literally every sport except soccer, when it comes to developing players through NCAA, and it's just men's soccer. And so it's sort of been, I think, for as long as MLS has existed, since the 1994 World Cup, we have had this problem in this country of trying to figure out why our development system for men's soccer is not nearly as effective as our development system is for literally every other sport. And I don't think we're getting close to figuring out what that answer is. Part of it is everybody else invests all of their assets into developing men's soccer players. And in the United States, it's one of many things that we're developing athletes in. But I think, getting our college soccer and our academic soccer system in tune to the point where it is able to develop world-class athletes is something that's going to require a lot of change to begin with, and nobody was really sure what that change looked like. And I think we're headed in the right direction in terms of organization and possibly funding. But I also think that there will be a little bit of a mad dash, mad scramble as I think universities start to prioritize what sports they want to invest in and what sports they need to cut unfortunately, based off of the House settlement. Personally, I don't think they need to cut any. And for most universities, Division I sports, regardless of whether or not they're revenue generating or not, are basically marketing tools for the institution and tools to get that institution ranked higher in national rankings, which increases applications, which increases the cost of attending schools. All of this stuff is like tertiary and secondarily generating revenue for the university. I mean, also just straight up name recognition for the university so they can get better applicants applying for the schools. And so I think some universities are going to, regardless of that, are going to start picking what sports they want to prioritize. And so a school whose soccer program is really struggling, that you don't really hear about players being developed out of, they might drop it because it's not giving them that ROI. But a school that has leaned into men's Division I soccer for a long time historically, they are probably going to pump more resources into it and get more assets to bring in better players. And so I think that reformation and that reorganization is going to happen. And it'll be interesting to see how that works. And if there is some sort of conference realignment for soccer, I'm not sure how that will happen or pan out.
So let me pause you there, Andrew, because I guess maybe this will be our denouement here is, do you think so? U.S. soccer and if U.S. soccer is being proactive as an organizer of the game in America, they should be wanting this role. Absolutely. But of course, what we're looking at here is, will there be a willingness to work together? Because the NCAA would essentially set a precedent that an Olympic organization, Olympic sport governing body, is now involved directly in their athletics somehow, if this next gen thing bears any fruit. And do they really want that? Do they want USA Swimming and USA Basketball and USA Gymnastics to suddenly come to them and say, well, you did it with soccer, we should be involved in this too?
I think that they would be fine with it. I think the NCAA is more concerned with marketing and selling TV money than they are with governing and managing the individual sports. And so if they can delegate tasks of handling rules and competitions and events and sort of guiding the development process, I think the NCAA would be happy to just sort of defer to the governing bodies if they wanted to involve themselves. I also think a lot of the governing bodies don't want to do it either. They just want to field teams that go to the Olympics and they can ride on the coattails of that.
Yeah, soccer's in a different category in that regard.
Yeah,
it seems like.
But I think that the NCAA wouldn't. I don't think there's a lot of like turf wars with that. I think what the NCAA wants to do is be a platform for developing world-class athletes, second to selling media rights to the college football playoffs and the NCAA basketball tournament. So I think they would be happy letting U.S. soccer sort of run the show with these tournaments. I don't foresee there being like a big turf war, if that makes sense. Rugby did that for all college rugby. USA Rugby handled it for a very long time, and then it finally got into the NCAA fold because it was a lot of resources for USA Rugby to do that. So it's not unprecedented.
Looking at your Blue Sky at Soccer Lawyer at bluesky.social, this college issue has, definitely been a burning topic, but there's many other legal things going on in American soccer right now. If you were to pick one other kind of burning legal topic, what would that be out of the bunch?
Ooh, I think this isn't necessarily legal, but it's more sports governance, so it touches on legal. But I'm really interested to see how U.S. Soccer handles USL's promotion and relegation proposal, and how it's going to handle sanctioning its leagues based off of promotion relegation. To me, it seems like you would just look at all the teams in the entire USL system as a whole and see if you can break it out so that it fits all of the requirements. I could also see them not doing that and really sticking to their guns in terms of the standards, but then they would have to get recertified almost every year.
Yeah.
But I think that is going to be a really interesting question as to how they handle teams moving in and out of professional leagues and the professional tiers regularly. I think it's an interesting question for the regulations. I don't know what their stomach is for changing the rules. I think the pro council will be fine with USL doing it. I don't think anybody has a problem with leagues doing it. I think it's more how the nuts and bolts of the sanctioning process will work after that.
Yeah. Yeah, especially in light of the legal environment we've had over the last, 8 years with NASL and the lawsuit and all that? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating to me to see how they're going to do it and how USL is going to organize their system to do it. I always think that these professional leagues and the standards are really in a closed system are really illusory, and it doesn't really matter if you're sanctioned at one level or not another by U.S. Soccer, because it's more reflective of your level and not necessarily determinative of it. But we'll see what happens with how they handle it moving forward, and when it happens, I'm not sure.
This topic, the college topic, and then obviously we didn't even get to touch on the labor issues with Major League Soccer Players Association.
Maybe
that's another one to come.
Happy to.
Andrew Visnovsky, the soccer lawyer, we know you through your Blue Sky account. How else might people find your work or what you do on a daily basis?
Well, I work at the law firm Vellawood. You can find me and the firm at vellawood.com. I have a blog there that is woefully unupdated. I think the last thing I wrote about that was the 2023 MLS Super Draft. And I'm on Twitter with my full name, and Instagram under Soccer Lawyer. So you can find me all over.
Andrew Visnovsky, thank you so much for shedding light on interesting times in the American soccer landscape.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate being on. Thanks for having me.
All right, welcome back in here, Morning Kick Around. We are going to start our last segment of the day, Culture Wars, here on Morning Kick Around. The decision from Captain America, Christian Pulisic, to not join the team just kind of escalated this week with some prominent figures, Tim Howard and Landon Donovan, saying, kind of calling Christian out for not coming. And then Christian Pulisic going on the CBS Galazzo show earlier in the week, I think yesterday or the day before, saying that, Howard and Donovan out of line, saying his heroes are overly critical, and that, kind of threw it in the face that Donovan once took a famous hiatus from soccer. So as this spills into the start of the Gold Cup, we also learned that Christian was going to come for these, was open and willing to join the team for the Switzerland and the Turkey exhibition matches, but Poch wanted an all or nothing commitment. So where are we at? Pros and cons to both. Plenty to talk about. Where are we kind of lying here, Mr. Davis?
Pros and cons. There's pros and cons to this. I don't know about that.
Or like, there's two sides to this conversation, and really, right? So it's like, are we? I mean, he's getting lambasted by the talking heads of American soccer, And in the comments, I see mixed. I see people like, let the guy rest if he's hurt. I mean, we're always going to cherish a World Cup performance more than a Gold Cup performance. But then there's the other side of the coin where people are saying the men's national team is in a state of crisis and they need their best player and their captain.
Okay, so I'm kind of over the fact he said he doesn't want to play, or he asked for to have the summer off. I mean, I was initially frustrated with that choice because I see a ticking clock when it comes to the U.S. men's national team in a home World Cup. And I, as a fan who has no real control over anything that happens, and yes, I have maybe a louder voice than some people do in American soccer, I still feel like a helpless fan in the sense that I can't make it be good for 2026. And so I'm feeling that pressure, right? We talked earlier in the show how pretty much the rest of America doesn't know the World Cup's coming, but soccer fans certainly do. And we certainly feel that pressure. And we recognize how transformative a World Cup on home soil could be. And in order for the World Cup to be the most transformative possible, the U.S. men's national team has to put in a good performance. We will capture more attention. We will get more soccer fans made. We will build more things. We'll all get paid more to be involved in soccer if the U.S. men's national team does a good job and reaches a good level, goes deep in that tournament next year. So I saw Pulisic's decision not to play this summer in that light as potentially harming the World Cup campaign in 2026. But I've been told by people, and I work with one of them, a former U.S. international who played in Europe and had to come back for summer tournaments, and Eric Winalda. I've heard, oh, this is fine. He needs to take this time off. Okay, fine, whatever. The man knows his body. And then once we knew, look, there was not going to be a Weston McKennie. There was not going to be a Tim Weah. But once we knew that Dest wasn't going to play anymore, and Janae Robinson was having surgery, and some of these other guys were not, got Fowler and Balogun had to pull out. There was no Ricardo Pepi. It kind of felt like, okay, this team is not going to be what I wanted it to be in the first place. It's fine if Christian Pulisic is not fine on some level. But it was a guarantee. It was only going to play out in a way that some people had critical things to say about his choice. And yeah, some of those people happen to be former national team players who are now paid to have an opinion. And keep that in mind. There's an incentive for people to go and say things about Christian Pulisic's decision. And guess what gets more heat around it? Saying, is there more heat? Is there more interest? You get more attention if you say, well, I completely understand his decision. Christian's a guy who, has had injuries in the past and he's played a lot of games. I get it.
So you're saying that internet culture and YouTube goes more on the extreme takes and not the measured and understanding views?
Hot take culture is obviously a thing, and it's a factor in this. So I think, and look, we'll get to what he actually said. He said it was out of line, way out of line. First of all, no, Christian, it's not. It's not way out of line.
I think he clarifies that it was like said confidentially, like DMs and stuff. They were understanding, but once they went on a public, their show, then tune changed. I think that was the out of line.
Well, he certainly was intimating that there are hypocrites in American soccer. So he was saying that. Now, but again, him saying that that people questioning his commitment to the national team was way out of line. It's not. This is exactly what this game is. This is exactly what the international version of the game is. This kind of push-pull. Is it patriotism? Is it nationalism? Is it just sports? It's all wrapped up. This is a very complicated environment in which we support our national teams. You cannot uncouple this thing of like, are you a real American? If you don't show up for your national team, you're not. That's just going to be the way some people think. Now, you may think they're wrong, but that's your opinion. There is no black and white here. So I don't think it's out of line for people to question his criticism. He can be upset by it, and he can push back if he wants, although I do think that this was a mistake, Rob. I don't think he should be speaking publicly about this. First, I don't think his dad should have did what his dad did on Instagram, and I don't think it was necessary for Christian Pulisic to go on, call it what you want, which, by the way, by that choice sends a signal, because maybe while Jimmy Conrad and Charlie Davies and to a lesser extent Tony Meola said some things about Christian not playing in this Gold Cup and sitting out the summer, when they get him on the show, are any of them going to be directly critical or directly challenging Christian Pulisic on this? No. This is softball city, right? And I look, some of those guys I know, and I'm sure they would be upset if I was saying this, but if they knew I was saying this, but I don't think that this was the right environment. It doesn't make it look like you're really addressing this. It makes it look like you're going in and trying to massage the narrative. And to me, that is naive because you're not winning this game. This is not Streisand effect, but it has that character of Streisand effect. By talking about it, you actually make it worse, Christian. That's my thought. I don't know how you feel about this.
Well, the one caveat I thought was interesting, the most interesting part of his appearance on that show was that he said that he wanted to be in there in the camp for the warm-up friendlies, but then take his rest during the Gold Cup itself. And then that Pochettino gave him like kind of an all or nothing sort of a response. And then he went on to say, I don't regret it. So I'm glad as a leader in a way he stuck to his decision and didn't get wishy-washy. Like, oh, maybe maybe he didn't go back on his word. And it's interesting that Pochettino said all or nothing. That decision, I don't know if that's good or bad. It seemed like having Christian Pulisic in and around the team to maybe show his leadership without having to use his body might have been a middle ground that they could have talked about.
No coach likes that idea. No coach is on board with that. Like nobody wants a guy who's not playing to be hanging around. They make that's a dynamic that is too difficult, I believe, in order to properly look. And I respect Pochettino's position on this. Again, as a fan, it's easy for me to say, well, let's get as many of the best guys as possible to play at least some games in this window. Again, with the World Cup coming next season. Again, my issue isn't necessarily that he's taking the summer off. Because if the choice, and we don't know if this binary is true, but if the choice is he sits out this year in the summer and he's better for the World Cup next year, he puts in an excellent performance in the World Cup next year, I would take that in a second.
I think yeah, if we could fast forward to like next August and the United States have had an amazing World Cup performance, no one's going to remember this at all at this moment right now.
Right, clearly. But if he obviously doesn't, if the team doesn't look good and he doesn't play well, then this is going to be something people talk about. And again, this is about commitment. And you're if the U.S. men's national team had any positive vibes around it at all, if they had come out of the Nations League going, hey, that was pretty decent, or maybe we didn't win it, but we put in a good showing. We made a final. We lost to Mexico in a tough one. There wouldn't be this kind of energy about Pulisic's choice. It wouldn't feel the same. It feels big. It feels important because we don't have any positive information about the direction of this team, Rob.
Is Pulisic's dad slipping into the Reina meddling soccer parents sphere here?
He was already there. You just didn't hear about him as much. Trust me. He was already there. At least in the sense that, again, he's a public person and he kind of is out public alongside Christian. He was a major part of the documentary that appeared on Paramount Plus on Golazo. I mean, I think they're obviously allowed to be close, and I don't begrudge Mark Pulisic the right to defend his son. I just don't think he did it the right way. And again, I know it's hard. Everybody wants to get out there and defend themselves, but you are fighting an uphill battle. You are not going to change everybody's minds, and you walk yourself into potentially the way that Pulisic carries himself. And this is unfair, right? Body language is a tough thing, but the way he talks, the way he carries himself, the things he sometimes says and the way he says them do not come off real good. They don't come off. They don't make him look good. And I don't want to hate Christian Pulisic. And I don't think he doesn't care. I'm not out here saying he doesn't care about the national team. I think he very much does. And again, if you want to make this argument, and maybe somebody around him was saying, this is the best choice for your body. Of course, he did take it on himself. Then okay. But this is not it. Take your summer. If you're taking the summer, take your summer. The team is playing games. They got a Gold Cup game on Sunday. If you're not there, you're not part of the team. Don't be part of the conversation. Step aside. Go play golf. Do whatever. We don't need to see you because it makes it worse, not better.
It's funny that you mentioned golf was because I was scanning the news there earlier, and he's got the paparazzi on his tail now that he kind of got himself front and center, that there is paparazzi following around with him and his girlfriend at the golf course this morning. So he's definitely stepped into that world if he wasn't there already. And you're talking about the way he talks about things and it doesn't like ingratiate himself. Do you think that's just kind of like a lack of depth of character, perhaps. Like he's just like he's got the one function on his mind. He wants to be a great soccer player. Every decision is based on, is this good for soccer or is this bad for soccer? And then, you know, conversation and communication is just completely
I don't know.
secondary.
That is beyond my level of expertise. I'm not going to psychoanalyze the guy. I'm just saying that based on the actions he's taken, this is not making him look good. And that's the bottom line for me. And I think that sucks because he is our best player. He is the star of the U.S. men's national team. I don't know that I want to demand that he be a more gregarious, outgoing, personable guy, because that would be better for American soccer. It'd be nice. It's not his fault he is who he is. He can be Christian Pulisic. If he's playing soccer at that level, I'm thankful for that. I don't need more necessarily, but don't make it worse. Right? Acknowledge where your shortcomings are, and your shortcomings seem to be in the fact that people perceive you to be, I don't know, this kind of hard to understand guy. He's aloof. He's quiet. I can tell you, being a very shy kid, that people take shyness and treat it as like you think you're better than everybody else. And I think sometimes that's how Pulisic comes off. And certainly this choice doesn't help. So again, you already have this perception about how you carry yourself. You're already not a guy people can connect with. You've got certain people in the American soccer fan base, not everybody, but certain people upset at you because of some dancing you've done and some other things. Like, don't make it worse. Don't make it worse.
A Christian Pulisic free United States men's national team kicks off the Gold Cup on Sunday in San Jose. So we shall see how this all pans out. If you're watching this now, thank you so much. And if you're watching this now and it doesn't hit subscribed at the bottom of the screen, if it doesn't say that, make it say so now. Hit that button. Become part of the MK Ultra movement. Take it a next step farther and become a member. A $3.99 per month memberships gets you early access to videos, gets you bonus content, access to the Discord that has channels for conversations on local, national, MLS, and international tournaments. So lots of places to have soccer conversations there. You can also follow us on social media at MKickaround X, Instagram, Blue Sky. Write us a note. We've got some good ones at morningkickaround@gmail.com. You can also support us with a little dinero on coffee.com/morningkickaround. There you can make up your own donation amount and schedule. So thank you for all who have donated there and become a member. A weekend of soccer ahead. You've got visitors, a lot of great stuff coming up. You got any final words before we depart the show this week?
Look, no matter what we just talked about, I'd like the United States to win the Gold Cup. So let's get off to a good start against Trinidad and Tobago. And fascinating weekend. And we'll have a lot to talk about on Monday. Looking forward to it.
All right. Until Monday, everybody, please enjoy your soccer.